everyone. Welcome to the AwardsWatch podcast. I am your editor-in-chief and host today, Erik Anderson, and I am joined by the Andy to my Miranda, AwardsWatch's associate TV editor, Karen Peterson. Hello, Karen.
Hello. That was a
And
fun introduction.
I think so. I think so too. But in a good way. I'm like a good Miranda.
Yes,
But
yes, you're not the devil.
sometimes. But you haven't even seen that yet, so you're good. And yes, that obviously implies that we are going to be talking about The Devil Wears Prada 2 today, which just came out this weekend. Huge, massive hit. I don't think anyone's terribly surprised by that, but you never know when nostalgia is going to hit, especially when it's 20 years later and when it's just going to fall flat. So we're going to start today talking about our relationship to the first film or the book, if we've read it. Spoiler alert, I have not read it. So yeah, Karen, tell me 20 years ago what your thoughts were of Devil Wears Prada, and did you rewatch it before the sequel?
So I did not rewatch it before the sequel. I rewatched it after the sequel. I've seen it several times over the years, so I was familiar with it enough that going in didn't feel like I don't know who any of these people are, what's happening. But I decided that I wanted to just experience the sequel on its own terms without having the fresh perspective of just having rewatched the first movie, because it is 20 years later. Um, and I did read the book. I actually read the book before I saw the original film 20 years ago. I think we read it in a book club or something. And I really enjoyed the book. I thought it was, fun and pretty light. It's not a particularly deep book. But a fun story. And I really liked the way that Miranda Priestly is described. I think Andy goes into a lot more detail about how devilish Miranda really is and her own internal turmoil because of some of the things that she's asked to do, um than what happens in the movie. And when I saw the first movie, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun, but I thought, gosh, there's some stuff that happens in Andy's story that just gets completely left to the side. Her boyfriend turns into just like this nothing. He's really a significant character in the book, and he's not at all really in the movie. And but yeah, I thought it captured the essence of the story really well. And it's not particularly deep. It's a girl who's trying to make it in journalism and ends up taking a job at a fashion magazine that she has absolutely no experience with and couldn't care less about, but she just needs a job. And that really resonated in 2006 because I was a fairly recent college graduate myself at that time. So, in fact, I think at the time the movie came out, I was actively searching for a job too. And I thought, what lengths would I go to just to have a paycheck? Anyway, so it just kind of caught me at all the right times. So that was my experience with the movie. And then going into the sequel, I thought it wasn't one that I thought, oh, this needs a sequel. But when I heard that they were doing a second one, I was immediately like, yes, I cannot wait to go back into that world and to see what these characters have been up to all these years.
Yeah, I did actually rewatch it right before my screening because I was doing the review this time because I do write sometimes, people. It's amazing, but sometimes they let me actually write a review here. So yeah, I mean, I probably have seen the movie at least once a year. It is a wonderful kind of souffle of a movie because the first is, I mean, relatively, I don't want to say innocuous. I don't want to say that it's too fluffy, but the stakes are relatively low, I think, in the first film and the first story compared to the second. There is such a kind of light nature to it. And the music is incredible. I don't think you can really kind of ever match that opening and that song. And it also feels very, very 2000s. It is so mid 2000s. It really exists in that specific space. I love uh, its representation of New York is pretty fantastic. And I always think, I mean, kind of anything, not to turn this into something odd, but any film that takes place in New York after 9/11, between like 2001 and like 2008, you always kind of have to look at it through a certain lens or wonder what lens it's going to look at it through. And, this was 5 years after. It's, it feels like here is here's the kind of exciting, almost imaginary version of New York that feels like in the movies, because it feels very fairy tale like, and having Anne Hathaway as a fairy tale character is bread and butter. It just makes it's perfect sense. And I love it. I love the first film. So going into the second, I was I know that the sequel book is dramatically different than what we have in the film. So much so that it doesn't even really, I don't think, warrant much of a comparison because they take two completely divergent tracks. Uh, but yeah, the sequel goes for a much deeper examination of journalism. At the first one, 2006, kind of the beginning of the internet really forging its way into print journalism, but not so much that it's really even much of a part of the first film at all. It's like this looming thing on the horizon that they weren't even aware was coming yet. And then in this sequel is the major kind of component that in corporate takeover. So going into that, Karen, what are your initial thoughts about the sequel? Does it warrant its existence? And do you think what everyone is doing in the sequel makes sense for 20 years later for these characters? Because I do have a few thoughts about that.
Yeah, yeah, I do too. First of all, I just want to point out that when the first movie came out in 2006, the first iPhone didn't hit until 2007. So that is really where our digital age started, was when people suddenly had access to the entire internet in their pocket. And so the first movie came out right before that era started. So, yeah, I think that it's interesting to look at just how much the world has changed in really the last 19 years when you look at it that way. Um, yeah, so I did not read the sequel book. I will say that. And so I went into this only having the trailers to go on, so not really knowing what the story was going to be, or where people were going to be. And I did not go to a media screening of this. I saw this just at an AMC on a Thursday afternoon, and I was shocked at how packed the theater was for that time of day. And it was there were a lot of younger girls there, and then there were a lot of moms that brought their daughters. And it was just delightful. It was so fun to see this with a packed audience of very excited people who really, like, they were going into this because they knew what kind of movie they wanted. And I think that that does help the effect of watching this. It definitely enhances the experience of it, to be in a room full of very uh, enthusiastic people who are loving it. Um, and so that being said, I also really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was very funny. I think that the commentary that it gets into on the state of journalism now, it was so accurate and also so painful to watch because of how accurate it is. Um, as far as where the characters are and if they all make sense, I think some do and some don't. I think I was totally on board with this journey that Andy had been on. It makes sense that after she left Runway and got like at the end of the first movie, she's getting hired to this little independent paper, and
Yeah.
from there she's kind of transitioned it into this big career where she's won awards that fits the Andy that we were left with after the experiences she'd had. Um, and I think in some ways where Miranda's at now make some sense that she's kind of toned things down over the years. Although I did think it was maybe a little too much in some places. Like she's a little too fine with some of the things that are happening around her. And I can understand Andy's frustration with that. I thought Nigel Stanley Tucci, I thought where he is makes sense that he's just kind of still by Miranda's side, still running Runway with her and just accepting the fact that she's never really going to allow him to leave her. He's never going to get pushed ahead, nudged into anything else, and that he would accept that. I know people like Nigel, and that totally tracked to me. And Stanley Tucci is just so delightful that he also really sells that character too. The one I think I was the most disappointed by was Emily Blunt. And not because she wasn't good. Like it was fun to see her back in that, that very posh, very just above everything, kind of looking down at Andy. But she was really toothless. And considering the journey that her character is supposed to have been on over these years and how she, we eventually learn how she left Runway and why, and where she's at now and how she feels about that, it just felt like she should be a lot more ruthless than she is. And so I was kind of disappointed by that.
That's interesting because I kind of have a an almost opposite opinion of both Emily and Miranda's like placement. I do think Andy's makes perfect sense, even though she's very vague about the 15 years being just kind of traveling around and talking to people and stories.
Yeah.
And it's very, very vague. But the opening is, right after the song. Great song by Dua Lipa, by the way. It's no KT Tunstall, but it's a good song. Um, and she's at this awards show when everybody in her journalism table gets the same text that they've all been fired, which is definitely the element that is extremely current and painful for many of people that we know and our peers. And she really takes the opportunity to go in, and this little PG-13 fluff movie becomes journalism fucking matters, and she really goes in. The parts with Miranda and Emily, however, as I love the film, I love both of them in it. It was a little surprising that after 20 years that Miranda was essentially in the same position, and it took this long in her late 70s to be considered by Ira to be the head of global content. That feels like something that would have happened much earlier. And I don't know. So that kind of struck me a little odd.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. I was not, yeah, sorry. When I said I feel like where she's at makes sense, I meant personality wise, not necessarily in her career.
Yes, I do think that some of the softening of the edges of her is valid. I think it works because we get plenty of moments in this which are not, and they are very sharp, which we'll get to in a minute with maybe my favorite line of this film. And with Emily, in the first, she's a foil, but she's kind of not a minor foil, but she's mean spirited on a mean girl in high school level because she is also very early in her career there. By the time we get to her now, she's fully crossed over into villain, evil territory. That's to me, I mean, she's literally dating the billionaire that is going to destroy Runway and Elias Clark. And not only is, she co-partnering with him, she is a part of the scheme to destroy Runway as a part of her like this long lasting vengeance plan that she has for Miranda. And I loved that. I thought that was great. Um, what I didn't care for was, jump to the ending that she gets this, wonderful, absolutely out of nowhere reconciliation and redemption of just like, okay, everything's fine. No worries. It does also provide maybe the second best joke in the whole film. And that's that she's been demoted down from working at Dior to coach. Absolutely hilarious.
Yes.
Because it's such a funny callback to, we're just jumping around everywhere here, by the way, to Miranda having to fly coach. Loved, loved, loved. Even though that's a scene that makes no sense, but we'll get to that later as well.
Yeah. There's a few of those.
It is. I do want to do some compare and contrast, though, because I think it's inevitable and it's fair. Because over the last 20 years, this film and its dialogue is so embedded in the lexicon of, I mean, obviously mostly girls and gays, but certainly in the way that you talk about anything. You can reference this film, the entire, cerulean sweater monologue, really just one of the greatest things in the history of the world. It should be a drag race lip sync competition element. Every line that Miranda has, we use all the time. And there are a few in the sequel, not quite as many, I don't think, but they have to kind of establish themselves and take hold. And we'll see what happens in 10 years and 20 years. When you think about the first and the second, how do you look at those lines and the screenplay as something that will last?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think, and this comes back to what I was kind of saying about the first movie, where it was fun, it was more lighthearted, it was kind of just about, it was just this fun story about this situation, and this girl finds herself in this, sort of fish out of water in the glossy high fashion world that girls are supposed to be into, and this is one that is not. And this now the sequel, it really is actually about something. And so I think that coming up with memeable moments was, I mean, memes weren't even really a thing in 2006, but that just kind of is how that happened. But it was definitely a quotable movie. This one, I think that's not what they're going for. They're trying to do something a little bit more meaningful. And so I think in terms of the important points that the sequel hits, as far as, like we've said, the state of journalism, the evolution of print media, or the disappearance of print media as it gives way to the digital age, but also where women are at in their careers, and how women are given the opportunity to help one another, and sometimes they take it and sometimes they don't, and how in the case of Miranda, her entire career is based on what one man at the top who owns everything is willing or not willing to give her, and how that affects not just her life, but everybody that works for her, the entire company. And so I think it's really more about those things. And so I don't think this is going to be as quotable, although I think, yeah, there's a couple of significant ones, but I think that that's okay because I think that the story will have more longevity. It won't be remembered for its memes, it'll be remembered for its themes.
I think you're right. And where the first film exists in such an ideal, perfect mid 2000s place, uh, this one will in. I mean, I don't even know what the world of journalism is going to look like in 10 years. I don't know what it's going to look like in five. I don't know what it's going to look like in one. So to think about where this story is now, I think it's not going to feel dated like sometimes things that we see 20, 30, 40 years might feel. It's going to feel like, wow, we didn't know how good we had it when it was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because there is really, yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot of hope for the future of journalism, how it's consumed, how it's allowed to even be presented. So this is going to feel not dated, but it might feel like an almost charming relic in 20 years. In a way that I think is really important. I think it is such a surprise that this was the story that they wanted to tell. And sometimes I think it's told very superficially, and sometimes I think it's told very deeply because if you're a journalist, and especially, all I could think about was sitting in a room full of critics watching this unfold and the number of freelancers that, struggle with piecemeal and the number of people that used to write for major outlets that don't because they're just completely cut off. Vanity Fair used to be really the magazine of record for entertainment, for reviews, and that is gone. They don't care about that anymore. So it's a story that is so fresh. It's a wound that is unhealed. So I think the timing of it is fantastic. I do agree with you about Nigel. I think him being as burned as he was by Miranda 20 years ago, is the kind of thing that, a girl and her gay bestie will get over, and they are lockstep
Yep.
for their lives. Even though it takes her also this much time, what, 40 years that they have, been working together, for
Mm-hmm.
her to kind of finally notice that he needs something more. And, this is where Andy can, kind of comes in and is able to facilitate that. Uh, Although it is kind of sad that his big shining moment kind of gets a pan away and cut.
I
But it makes kind of perfect sense for
Yeah.
him. It's like, yes, he's going to get his moment, but it's really kind of for him. It's maybe less so for us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I want to highlight, as we have talked about, some of these lines and some of these iconic moments. Uh, the ones that stand out the most. There's definitely two for me, so I won't reveal both of them and rob you of that. But I'll go with, and it's in the trailer too. But Emily, in her deepest villain mode, uh, when she says, "May the bridges I burn light my path, my way."
Yeah.
I will be using that several times in the future. I may have already used it many times. It's beautiful, and it feels like something that you've heard before, like it's been eons.
Mm-hmm.
Like this was almost like medieval times. You would have seen this phrase in, I don't know, in like Shakespeare and something. It just has the ring and tone of such a classic, gorgeous, evil line, and I love it.
Yeah. Well, and the moment where she says it, you can feel what she's feeling, and yeah, and so it's delivered well. It's such perfect, visual writing, and then it just happens at a moment where and in a way I think we can all relate to, where yeah, you're always the advice is always don't burn bridges. If you have to leave somewhere, try to leave, where it's, you're in good standing with people. But sometimes you got to burn that bridge, and it feels really good to do so. And so that line was poetry. I loved it.
It is. I think I liked it so much because I am if you obviously if you follow me on Twitter, you know I'm pretty notoriously unvarnished, and there's no veil about, like, if I feel a certain way about somebody, I say it in a way that,
Mhm.
maybe its own burnt bridge, but I can jump really far. So I don't know. What is another line or a moment that really sticks out with you and you think is going to have some longevity to it?
Well, I think there's the line that Miranda says to Emily, which I felt in my soul because I had a college professor that said something kind of similar to me, but in a much less biting way. But it actually completely changed how I saw myself and changed my path, actually. Um, but that is when she says, "You're not a visionary, you're a vendor." Oh, that is such a simple but cutting to the soul line, because Emily has always seen herself as something, she's destined for this. She's always worked really hard, and she's someone who thinks that that's enough. And Miranda understands that that's not all it takes. And, but just the way that she says it, it's just, oh, that is a knife to the heart.
It is by far the meanest thing that Miranda says to any person in either
Mhm.
of the films. And the delivery of it is so absolutely knife cutting cruel. But the thing about it is that it is an earned comment,
Yeah.
because, that is jumping off of the initial, beginning of the film is this huge scandal at Rock's runway about this puff piece of a sweatshop, which results in Miranda almost getting canceled. And that's why Andy is back, because she has to come and write the all encompassing mea culpa that brings Runway back and Miranda back. And that involves Miranda and Andy and Nigel having to go to Emily, who is whatever artistic director of Dior, or at least the flagship store, and beg for them to stay on as clients for ads. So Emily is obviously relishing this turntable situation that she is in, part of her grand scheme that she has going this entire time. And having Miranda in this state of begging is really kind of what she's wanted these 20 years. And she does. Miranda acquiesces to Emily's demand for ads and all that. But Miranda already knew that going in, so there was nothing really that Emily was taking from her. She was already prepared to give her exactly what she asked for, which we know as viewers, because we've seen that Emily doesn't. One of the great aspects of storytelling, where a director chooses what the audience knows versus what a character knows. It's always a really great balance to have. And that's a great example of us knowing that Miranda has the upper hand the whole time. So when she delivers that line, it is an absolute rebuttal to Emily thinking that she had lord over Miranda in that moment. But while it is the meanest thing I think Miranda's ever said, it's one of the most warranted of all of the, nasty little comments that she's made that are kind of like one-offs. It's so intentional and it's so brutal. And I loved it because I love catty, nasty, girl on girl meanness. I love women supporting women and then women hating women at the same time. It's the bedrock of anything from the 40s and just Joan Crawford and Barbara Stanwyck and any Betty Davis, anything fun.
Oh yeah.
That's what's
Yeah.
happening right there. That would have been Betty Davis in the 30s,
Yeah.
40s.
Well, and I think one of the reasons why it hits so deep, well, no, the reason it hits so deep compared to anything else that Miranda ever says to anybody is that Miranda is always reacting to kind of the situation. Oh, she's so, did she die? Like she's so slow, or you're boring me, those kinds of things that she says in much better ways. But it's always just like reacting to the situation. This moment, she is telling Emily who she really thinks she is deep down in her core. And that is the most painful thing that anybody could say. And something that cutting and that honest.
Absolutely. I want to go to the new people that we have in the sequel that are obviously not we're not a part of the first one because we do have such a really neat cast that is supporting the core four. We have Simone Ashley, who is basically in the Emily role uh, as Amari. I really loved her. I thought she was a much more, I think, maybe balanced version of Emily Blunt in the first one. She has less screen time, obviously, but I think I think she's wonderful. And just her physical presence and stature is so stunning. And she also gets the wonderful line of who sells Chanel? Because exactly.
Right.
But at the same time, as somebody who loves consignment stores, I am dependent on people doing that. So please sell your Chanel. Thank you.
Yes.
Um, and Justin Thoreau as the Jeff Bezos meets Elon Musk receding hairline lunatic billionaire. His laugh, his prosthetics, crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He's crazy. He's crazy.
Yes.
Um, Tell me about some of the new people that you really like vibed with or didn't.
Yeah. Okay. So I will say with the Amari character, I just wanted to jump in on that, and I think
Yeah.
um because yeah, I agree with you. I thought she was great, and I felt like because the first movie was really about the assistants. Andy's hired as the second assistant. It's about that life. And this one isn't about that. This is about like what meetings are happening while the assistants are running around getting coffee. And so I think that we kind of see her in more of where Emily would have been when she wasn't at the desk in the first movie. We just never got to see that side of it. But she's also much more uh calm about everything than Emily was. Emily's always been a basket case. And yeah, and so I liked that, and I think that's why it's totally fine that we just get these glimpses and not a lot of screen time with them. And I loved, I'm so sorry I don't have his name, but the guy that's playing the second assistant.
Caleb
Um,
Heron.
yes, he's so delightful. He's just so fun and just happy to be there. And
His
it's
whole I have to pee, I had a venti, and she's like, was it worth it?
it's so great.
It's great. That's so very classic Devil Wears Prada, where it's like,
Mhm.
ooh, that's mean and shady, but it's so lightweight. Mm.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so good. I also agree about Justin Thoreau. He is so weird and just he's so perfect for it. Um, the one character that I was like, why is he even here was BJ Novak as the Irv's son, which the character being there makes sense, but casting BJ Novak was weird. And I'm still not really sure why he was there. They really ultimately don't do anything with him. It's there to just kind of move the plot and oh, Miranda's supposed to about to be getting this big promotion, but then his father dies, and now he's taking over, and he doesn't care about any of this stuff, and so her promotion is basically just dead, and and so when that first starts to happen, when he comes in and wants to have this meeting with her, I thought, okay, all right, he's gonna actually be part of this story now. He's gonna take over. I thought him wanting to meet her in the cafeteria and Miranda Priestly eating lunch in the cafeteria and then also flying on coach and just all it was all these things that she's probably never done in her life. And it was so it was like it was funny to see those things happen to her, although it was a little weird that she's just taking it and not saying anything other than we have a cafeteria.
Totally. Yeah, the BJ Novak as an actor for this role was kind of odd because
Mm.
he's fitting this uh succession type uh elder son
Yeah.
billionaire, the whole Northwest vest, all of or North Face vest. He has the outfit down, but there was just something about not that he was ineffectual, but he was just not he was never intimidating or sinister exactly. So his choices, and maybe that is the intent, that he kind of comes across as pretty junior, and almost like all of the horrible decisions that he's making are less about maybe something mean spirited, more just because he doesn't really know any better.
Yeah.
But if you're going to include the most famous house on Lake Como and the succession of that of it all, I kind of wish that maybe it was a different actor, or it was somebody who was a little more um, kind of locked in to that. Because while we do have Justin Theroux as the other billionaire, he's largely for comic relief because he's pretty stupid. He wants to
Mhm.
build a rocket to the sun and call it Icarus. He's an absolute idiot. But
Yep.
then he does have that moment. I mean, subtlety is not a part of this movie whatsoever.
No.
While they're having this dinner in front of the Last Supper, where he really dresses down exactly what his intent is um, to Miranda, with the whole lava exploding on Pompeii. There's no joke about that. It's very, hey, AI is here. It's coming. I'm embracing it. You won't matter anymore. Which, sidebar, AI is a big part of, obviously, this film and this story, because whether it's, Hacks, the comeback on HBO, that is a conversation that is absolutely going to be happening in so many films and TV shows. And
Yeah.
this is directly to that. And it's funny because I think you would have had a point where how could you have AI for a runway, or models and photo shoots, and actually that is very much happening. So
Mhm.
it's that.
Well, I mean,
I,
just
I
the programs that you can plug in, like, okay, here's what I have. What outfit should I wear? Like, it's in our homes. AI is dressing us in our own homes. So
Yeah, Cher Horowitz in Clueless was a prophet with her
yeah,
little
it's true.
outfit maker. Um, there is an interesting thing happening with, and there's a lot of conversation online about this right now, about both Miranda and Andy's relationships and what they mean, why they are even there, because they're ineffectual, not really, they don't have a lot really to do. To which I say that is amazing and fantastic because that's literally the girlfriend wife character of 1,000 movies
Yep.
with a male lead. There are movies where the wife is literally on the phone. That's her whole performance.
Hmm.
So to have husband boyfriends that really are just there to gas up their women, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what men should be doing.
Absolutely. And it made me so happy that Kenneth Branagh signed on for a role like that. I was just like, yes, because how many, like you say, the wife on the phone, how many of these like Oscar winning actresses have been relegated to roles like that? And and the fact that Branagh would be like, sure, sure, I'll be the husband at home, like taking the dog out for a walk while you have an important conversation.
When he's
It's
not
great.
being a violinist in that string
Right.
quartet. What a wild job. I
Yes.
it's I love it. And I love, because obviously when we leave the first film, Miranda and her husband are on the outs, and now
Hmm.
obviously we know that they are divorced. She still has the house.
Hmm.
Love that. I don't know where he is, probably in Bushwick. I don't really care. Love that. Uh, One of the other elements I think that there's a lot of conversation about, and I'm not quite sure exactly how I feel about it, but maybe I do. And that is, while this is certainly about the state of journalism and people losing their jobs, the only person that we ever see again from Andy's group at her paper is that one guy, and he just kind of sits there at the bar to give her some advice once in a while. So it's very limited. The scope is very, very limited to Runway, to Andy. So there's not, I don't think it, I think it would be very difficult for it obviously to try and speak to much more specific needs than that. But there is something about it that's a little, maybe that I was wanting a little bit, even if it wasn't necessary. And then the
Yeah.
other the other thing
Well,
is the
this,
idea that you've got two billionaires, both pretty bad and evil, fighting for one thing, and the only thing that can fix it is another billionaire, but a good one. And I
yeah.
want to talk about her in a minute, but because I know you have something to say.
I do, yeah. Well, just with the writer friends, the fellow fireys, there we actually do see another one because one of her other friends had gone to work for a publisher and
Right.
is trying to get her to write this tell-all about Miranda. And so I do agree. I think that we really don't spend a lot of time with the industry. It's sort of that firing is a means to get Andy back to Runway. It's a plot device that
Yeah.
comments on what's happening, but it's really mostly just a plot device. But I think the way that it's also used as Andy could sell her story and make a lot of money. And will she, won't she? And then Miranda at the end knowing about that too. And encouraging her to do it. And so I like that. But yeah, I think that that's also part of just where we are. Everybody, you get fired, you write a book. That's just, the next logical steps. So and this friend that had been a journalist that had also lost her job, what is she doing now? She's editing people's boring memoirs and she's kind of stuck in a different side of publishing altogether. So we do see a little bit of a glimpse of that, but
I
but
forgot about
yeah.
that. And it's Rachel Bloom,
Uh-huh.
who obviously connected to Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and Brush McKenna, the
Hmm.
co-creators of that show. So I love seeing Rachel Bloom there. I just blanked on that, even though I wrote about it, which is,
It's
what I
been a
wrote
couple
about it
days, I
is
get it.
that it's almost too on the nose
Hmm.
because it is that, and it is funny that the whole time Miranda kind of really knows everything,
Hmm.
always at any time. Um,
Always.
so let's talk a little bit about that third billionaire because Lucy Liu only has two scenes here,
Yes.
and obviously incredibly crucial. Um, you kind of know that it's coming. It's again, it's not a very subtle movie. She's introduced early because after Andy writes this mea culpa, the stories that she puts forward aren't really doing any numbers, and it's because they're largely the kind of things that she was doing before Runway, and it's not really the target audience. And so Lucy Liu, the ex of Justin Theroux here, is basically the Mackenzie Scott of
Mm-hmm.
the Jeff Bezos Mackenzie Scott here, where she has half of those earnings and she's utilizing it for charity and philanthropy. And so Andy needs something to kind of connect and, wants those attaboys from Miranda. And so she says that she'll be able to get this interview with her. And that's been Miranda's like big fish for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not true, but it does, give us some fun scenes with Tracy Tom, who gets to return as one of her friends from the first film. Although I wish Rich Summer was back because he was the only good friend really of that group.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but again, plot device. It gets Andy to her, and it's Miranda uh, to her to get this interview. And yeah, she ends up being a savior, a benefactor. Um, and so I kind of want to ask what you think about that as a plot device, but also uh, Lucy Liu, who I just wish had more.
I would love to have seen Lucy Liu some more. Yeah, she's just great. And yeah, I think even just one more scene, it would have been fun for her to get to be the one to break the news to her ex-husband. I think that this was happening and that he lost. But I also I think where I think this is another good commentary, another poignant one on where we are in the world, where we've gotten to this point where the billionaires run everything, they make all the choices, and what we're left to count on is the hope that one of them will be decent and will do the right thing. And that's what we have in this character. Much like Mackenzie Scott transforming all of her divorce settlement into billions for charity. And yeah, so I feel like it's kind of just really laying out this is what we're left with in the world. We the regular people can only fight so much without help from from that group, from that circle. And it's another
Definitely.
depressing thought.
It is. Let's go to something less depressing and kind of the reason for the season, and that is the fashion in the film.
Oh
Because
yeah.
obviously, in the first, we're kind of locked in on that, but it's upped even more here. And obviously, I will talk about Madonna in Vogue in a minute because why would I not be doing that? Because the return of that song is fantastic. But what we get to see in this sequel, the Balenciaga, the Dior, Van Noten, Armani Privé is huge in this sequel. Um, do you have not a favorite, but like maybe three favorite looks? Because I think there are obviously huge standouts, like Miranda's gorgeous red dress from the spring florals, groundbreaking moment. But what are your favorites?
Man, I was not prepared for that. I should have been. Why was I not prepared for that? I'm talking to you about this. A lot of what I was really, I mean, yes, Miranda's dress really stood out. I think the blue dress that Andy's wearing when they're going to Irv's birthday party.
Yes.
Um, and I loved Andy's dress for the Hamptons. I really liked what Andy was wearing because it all felt like stuff that I would be drawn to, that I would be interested in wearing. I'm not a high fashion person. I enjoy looking at it, but I'm not usually someone who uh I don't dress well. but but yeah, like everything that she's wearing, I was just like, yeah, I would actually love to wear that wardrobe.
It is. I love, obviously we get so many callbacks to the first film and, montages and things like
Hmm.
that, including, Andy going into the closet with Nigel
Yeah.
uh, to, to figure out things to wear to go to the Hamptons, to Miranda's little private party full of cameos. Um, and she picks out that gorgeous color blocked, sort of like a stained glass looking Van
Hmm.
Noten, which is like out of step for the beigeness of, a Hamptons weekend, but so cute, so
Yeah.
fantastic. I love that. I mean, I liked the oh, actually no, the Van Noten was tassel jacket, Miranda's tassel jacket. I liked it. And it's funny because it looks like something I would absolutely put together myself. So I was just like, wait a minute. Is this no, this I like this, but
I
this
actually
is
did think of you when I saw it.
and like
Yeah,
doing that little shake. I'm like,
absolutely.
I would do this. I would just literally like glue tassels from like a Michael's craft store onto a jacket. That would be
Hmm.
my vibe. I think though, my my favorite, it's definitely Andy's Armani Privé jumpsuit, where
Hmm.
like the straps are those ties.
Yeah.
My God. The way though, you obviously have to have a certain build to be able to wear something like that. Sure, that's fine. But she looks 7 feet tall. It is so beautiful. It's so stunning. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it, love it, love it.
Yeah. I also love about Andy that after her experiences in the first movie, where she really did not care about fashion at all, even when she left, she still didn't really care about it. But she did learn. She learned how to put herself together. She learned how to coordinate outfits, and she has thrifted. She talks to Nigel about like these amazing finds that she's had that were, and so I love that. It felt like she would have wanted to carry that with her and actually care about what she wore, but in a cost effective way.
Absolutely. And we get
Mhm.
that great moment with uh, the other assistant, Jin, um, who also saves the entire company by that single act of recording the conversation.
Yeah.
Which, sidebar, the plot device of having that detailed of a high level board meeting in a cafeteria where everyone could hear, stupid. It's
Yeah.
absolutely stupid. But we needed to get that recording and yada yada.
Right. Right.
But it's so great when she's talking to Andy about her look, which was thrifted because there was a misspelling of Gautier. So she was able to get it super cheap. I love that idea because there's something about it that does bring that down to a place where you and I are watching this, and I do this all the time. I go
Mhm.
to consignment stores and the Real and all of these places for these clothes, but in a place that I can afford them, because I'm not going to buy a $3,000 Gucci jacket. I'll buy it for 500. But
Yeah.
you know what I mean. It just
Yeah.
it kind of it leads to this idea too of, you're the old adage of dress for the job that you want, not for the one that you have. And I think that Jin in that moment versus Andy, like in the first one, um, understands that in a way that is current. Even though it's an old adage of a phrase, it felt very fresh, and I
Yeah.
loved that.
Yeah. Something else that I really enjoyed, it's little and it's actually in the trailer too. It's a very small moment, but um it's where Miranda's in Milan and she's by herself and she's walking through, it's down that street and she's surrounded by these designers,
The
by these
Galleria,
stores. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And I, so I went to Italy a couple years ago just on a trip with some girlfriends and I did not know that that was actually normal. Like we're in Rome and we're walking down this street and there's just this corner where there's a fountain in the middle and there's a Tiffany and there's a Prada and there's a Gucci and there, it's like just all of the, and then we saw the same thing in Venice too. And it's just like, oh, this is just what Italy does, but it also, I don't know what I liked about the shot when Miranda is standing there and she's looking, she's kind of turning around and looking. It's this place where all of these big fashion, iconic fashion houses come together. And that's also what she's been doing at Runway for her entire career is bringing all of these names together in one place and sharing it. And I like that visual.
I love that observation so much because that is exactly what she does with Runway. She brings all of these legacy companies together that have been fashion houses for over 100 years. Uh, so yeah, but a great observation. I love that because that's exactly what she's doing, while at the same time afraid of losing all of that in that moment because that is right after uh, Justin Theroux drops that Pompeii bomb on her, and she is reckoning with that. And again, one of those things too, where we have a certain amount of information, Miranda has a certain amount of information, and and we kind of go with it.
Yeah.
Um, let's kind of close with how successful that you think the film is on its own as a sequel. What do you think the ending is telling us? Do you feel like it's a happy ending, a sad ending, ambiguous, hopeful? What do you think?
I love that question. So first of all, I think that this is very much a sequel. I don't think it exists without the first film, without some big changes. But I think that's okay. I think this is a sequel that actually exists for a reason. It's not just there to make money. And I think that it really is a nice and a fun, entertaining way to continue the story of these characters in a way that we didn't even necessarily know we needed, but is certainly welcome. And then as far as the way that it ends, I think that it's hopeful. One of the things that I try to always keep in mind, and I have a day job because journalism does not pay the bills. And my day job, I work with college students. And right now it's graduation time. We've got graduation in 2 weeks. They're all, a lot of my students are getting ready to move on to the next phase of their careers. And so they're all kind of on this precipice and they're really nervous about industries and where they're going. And a big thing that's happening now is, people are looking to AI proof their futures and looking for careers that they can do that. And one of the things that I always try to remind them is that everything is cyclical. Yes, the world is going to look different, but also just because something is a certain way now doesn't mean it's always going to be this way or it's never going to look like it used to. It's going to change for sure. But we're seeing people go back to dumb phones. We're seeing, things that used to be all we had. Now people are making the choice to go back to some of those things because it was a simpler, better time in some ways. And so I think that what I am left with at the end of this film is this hopefulness that they're all working together. They've all learned something along the way, Andy and Nigel and Miranda. Um, Emily also, but in a very different way. And they're going to move forward and they're going to keep doing what they can as long as they can, and they'll be ready for whatever comes next.
Yeah, I think the ending is very smart and thoughtful because it is not happy. It is not completely bleak, but I think Miranda knows because she really kind of telegraphs this through most of the film that the the influx and savior quality that Lucy Liu brings to it, will she want to be a part of it? Will she want to change that? Does that change? I think Miranda knows that this is a probably a temporary stay and that she is unsure of what the future is. And I think that is the right kind of place to be with it. But because I said I was going to talk about Vogue and Madonna, I do obviously want to mention one of the neat things about bringing this song back in a fashion montage, because in the first film, it's beautifully cut sequence of Andy as she has elevated her fashion for the office, and it's these dozen cuts of her in the streets hailing cabs on her way to the subway with new clothes every time. And how it is in the sequel is when they're in Milan, and it is cut after cut after cut of new fashion. But because this story is really about everyone and not just Andy's journey, everybody's in it. Miranda's in it. Nigel is in it. Amari is in it. So we get 4 new looks at every cut as they go to every event. And I was wondering if the song was going to come back. And, it's the only song they bring back from the first film. You've got 3 Lady Gaga songs and Madonna in the same movie together. I mean, that's as close to kind of healing that as we can possibly get. But I love it. It's one of the smart things that the sequel does, of many smart things the sequel does, is understanding when to be nostalgic, how to use it, and when to speak to right now. I think it's a much smarter film than maybe I think it's gotten the credit for being a pretty smart film compared to the first more fluffiness. But I think it really cements itself in sequences like that and that ending.
Yeah. I love what you were just saying about Vogue, and I totally agree with that. And I think one of the things that just on the subject of the nostalgia aspect and sort of those Easter egg references to the first film, they are subtle in such a good way, where it's like, if you're not paying attention, you're not looking for it, you're not going to notice it, and it's fine. Like the scene with the 2 belts, or
In
or
the
at the
park, in
end.
that opening.
Yeah. Yeah, or at the end when she's wearing it's like the cerulean sweater, but it's been cut into a vest and it's all shabby and kind of falling apart, but it looks great still. And if you didn't remember the cerulean sweater in the first movie, that's not going to mean anything to you, and it doesn't matter if it does or doesn't. But if you do know it, and then it's just a fun little nod that just makes you like, oh, I get that reference. That's great.
I love that. And because I invoked Lady Gaga, I did love her cameo as
Yes.
an absolute combatant for Miranda, that she kind of had to beg to do this. And it's very funny that, in real life, Meryl Streep called Lady Gaga and said, "Hey, do you want to do this?" Love that connection. I loved Gaga's performance in this. It's
Yeah.
really, really fun. And yeah, she has 3 songs, which is kind of crazy. All new original songs.
They're good too.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, of course they are, it's Gaga, but yeah, I also just on the subject of like that relationship between Gaga and Miranda and that like animosity, I think that also kind of gives us a little insight into how much Miranda has lost her power because it used to be that she was someone who everyone was afraid of. Nobody would dare say no to her. And now she's having to beg, this huge pop star to do a fashion show in Milan, and it's not just a given that people will just do what she wants anymore.
exactly that. Yeah, it's one of the things that just gives the this sequel so many shades that might not have been there before. I love it. Well, this was fun. I loved this.
This was so fun. I'm so glad
It,
I got to talk about it with you.
I know. I kind of like this twofer thing. Maybe we don't need anyone
I
else, Karen. I
mean,
don't.
yeah,
I
we
don't
got
know. We'll
this.
see. We'll see what the people think. Um, Karen, please tell everybody where they can find you on the internet.
Sorry, I have a kitten ripping a bag apart behind me. I'm trying to make him stop.
I can see that, and it's absolutely hilarious. Let him live his life.
Yes. Well, you can find lots of content of my kittens and other things. If you follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky at Karen and Peterson. My written work is at AwardsWatch, and I'm also on the Citizen Dame podcast. So
I love it. And you can obviously find me at awardswatch.com. Awards Watch Erik on Twitter and Awards Watch everywhere else. So much to look forward to. We're just a week ish away from the Cannes Film Festival. We'll have a pre festival podcast on that, what we're looking forward to the most. And a big thing we're going to talk about next week is the new Oscar rule changes, which we could have probably spent multiple hours on today, but
yeah,
that will be a big part of that show, and certainly how the Cannes Film Festivals will impact these new rule changes. So until then, thank you everyone for listening. That's all.